Atrast Vala, brothers and sisters, I am Tarat. My videos pertain to all things related to the Dragon Age series. The content my channel provides assumes you've already played at least one of the Dragon Age games, so this is the blanket spoiler warning for the video. If you want to help grow my channel, feel free to comment below with suggestions and other video ideas. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into it. Atrast Vala, brothers and sisters, today I bring you another Dragon Age build, and today we are going to be exploring the world of the King of Thieves. This devilishly handsome rogue will be the best thief throughout Ferelden. I'm going to tell you about his role-playing, his skills, abilities, relationships, and his specializations, so you can go into Dragon Age Origins with a new way to play. The King of Thieves is a shocker, male human noble rogue. He'll be a master of dual-wielding combat and the lock-picking master. The king shall do everything in his power to live his life on the edge, and while he understands the noble courts, he lives on the rush of balancing his double life. A good nobleman by day and the King of Thieves by night. The king will certainly be an interesting playstyle if you've ever wanted to try your hands at a good old Flynn Rider type character. The King of Thieves was not always a thief, nor has he been a king. Yet, he was instead the younger son of the Terran of Highever Bryce. His older brother, Fergus, was a remarkably noble man trained well in the ways of the court and the blade. The king had often held a slight bitterness towards his older brother. Perhaps it was how his brother was somehow better at everything compared to him. Maybe it was this that caused the king to lash out all the time. Regardless, the king had given up trying to outshine his brother and set himself to standing out in a different way. This, of course, led to much reprimanding and punishment. This did not stop the king, as it merely gave him what he really wanted, which was all the attention. Eventually, however, he found a nifty little statue within the Wonders of Theda's shop in Darrin when his father took him shopping. The king had looked around, no one watched, no one would know. The king had reached out for it and plucked it off the shelf and quickly hid it on his person. His father conducted the business as usual and no one was the wiser. This rush had given the king just what he needed. He found his place. In the following years, the king had actually managed to calm down for a time. It was remarkable. His parents were flabbergasted. He went to the chantry, he was doing well with his studies, he was being well behaved, but what they didn't know was how the king had been living a rather interesting double life. He had been known to sneak out of the castle at night to hang out with some of his less reputable friends, and they would go on heists. This group of friends were actually a solid mix of elves, a few other noble humans who had felt similarly disingenuous to the noble lifestyle, a couple human commoners, and even a surface dwarf. His name was Shortstack. This small group would often run amok and steal something from someone, the elves and the commoners for the possible money they could make from it, the noble boys for the rush, and the dwarf because he had Carter connections to make it all work and he was bored. They had few rules, but they were simple. No stealing from the houses that the nobles were from, no stealing from people too poor, not because of some high horse rule that they couldn't afford to have their goods stolen. No, it was because they couldn't afford the security for the goods, and that made it not as fun to steal them. And the final rule, taking a page from Tyler Durden, was that you do not tell anyone about this group. It was actually through this group that the king had met two close friends of his, Sir Gilmore, well, he wasn't a sir yet, and Darrin, both of which had their own reasons for being there. Darrin was usually drunk when he was out on a heist, so many thought he only did it because he was drunk. When asked about the heists and the code that the group had developed, he had never really responded properly, almost as if he had no recollection of the nights prior. Gilmore was a commoner that was good with a sword and usually posed as a guard when he had the opportunity. He was actually pretty good at it, and so the king pulled some strings and managed to turn him into his own personal guard. While the group's rules was not speaking of the group, at some point a young elven maid had followed a sober Darrin into the party. This had confirmed that he wasn't drunk all the time at least, but on the other hand, Iona had found out about the group. She was about to rat them out until the king had walked over to her and talked to her about it. Explaining his side, she blinked a few times, understanding the reasoning. Supposedly, the king smiled warmly at her and then she asked to be a part of the group. She merely wanted to make sure that they all didn't get arrested or something, or so she said. The group happily obliged, and as time passed, she participated less and less, but whenever she did attend, she would be within a pace or two of the King of Thieves. Time marched ever forward, the group disbanded, primarily as a necessity, as everyone was getting older and had been pulled away or grew out of their rebellion. King Kalen had called the armies to Ostagar, the Kuslans were prepared to send their troops down for them as they marched onward. Fergus had been sent out ahead, and the king was to stay home and defend the land. He felt that perhaps ruling the land would do something for his inane boredom. After dealing with the matters of the day, he decided to finally make his move on Iona. He felt that this might be the last night he sees her again, and he wanted to make a move. There had been a few years of back and forth, of flirtations and mild amusement, so why not? Sadly, that love was not meant to last, as the king had realized realized that was not the life meant for him. He was to be a Grey Warden. But now then, let's get on to the quest line. When going to Lothering, the king would find himself relatively helpful to everyone, including the elves, but would assist the Chantry woman. The king had a very strong desire to make up for his past sins, so he put on the airs of supporting the Chantry, but whenever behind closed doors, at least until a certain plucky, red-headed sister worms her way into his life, he will find himself against the church as a whole. Regardless, he does what he can to help the village, if only for the extra coin in the jobs. After recruiting everyone he can recruit in Lothering, he is off to his next mission. Going to Redcliffe, the king will assist the village in the bare minimum, mainly because he sees the fair ladies of Redcliffe and finds himself wanting to help them out. This is pretty much his motivating factor in helping a lot of the townsfolk. He will help out all of the women and agree to find Owain's daughter, primarily because he's curious to see if she's good looking as the rest of the women. He will remain relatively respectful of Isolde for the most part, but be very critical of her and implicate her being a source of all this when the time comes. After cutting his way through the castle, he will be shocked at the revelation of what Connor has become. He is very squeamish at the idea of killing a child and will gladly accept the idea of Jowan performing the blood sacrifice on Isolde. It makes the most sense to him. As far as he's concerned, the redemption of Isolde is the death of her. He will send a mage into the Fade, seeing as he cannot do it himself. Going to the mages' circle, he will be aghast at the idea of the mages having overrun the tower. From what he learned of mages, abominations were nothing to be trifled with. He will go through and cut down all the abominations, accepting Wynn's help along the way. The female blood mage is someone he kills despite her prettiness. He will meet Cullen and hear him out. While he is not okay with the idea of killing potential innocents, he will state that it might be the best course of action. However, after some talking down from Wynn, he will find himself being incapable of killing innocents as well. After rescuing the first enchanter, when asked on his opinion of the matter, he will recommend vetting the mages, believing that it might be the best case for everyone involved. They can find the blood mages and the circle won't be fully annulled. However, he will be displeased to find out the mages won't be able to assist him. However, he will be quite pleased about the Templars. Traveling to the Brazilian forest, he will find himself rather excluded, and rightfully so. He's a human among elves. However, he does try to help the village out, if only for the coin. If you have yet to have romanced Liliana, he will sleep with Gaina. If you are already romancing Liliana, he will instead help Cameron out with his relationship problems. When the time comes, he will parley with the werewolves and assist them in obtaining Zathrian, and when the final confrontation arises, he will side with the werewolves and help them out to force Zathrian to break the curse. He will march his way through the Frostback Mountains to Orzammar to gather the Grey Warden traditional allies. After realizing there's a near war in the Assembly, the king will choose to side with Harrimont as he realizes that Edrin had chosen him as his successor, and Balin did a very terrible first impression. Balin wouldn't be a king, he would be a tyrant. The King of Thieves aids Harrimont all the way through to the end, going to the Anvil of the Void and siding with Caradin. The king can only imagine how difficult it would be to steal things when everyone starts buying Gollum protection for their goods. After he obtains the crown, he makes his way to Orzammar and crowns Harrimont the King of Orzammar. There we go, we have our Harrimont supporter. While in Denerim searching for Brother Genevieve, doing Liliana or Alistair's personal quests, the king will complete Slim Coldry's crime wave. He will also do questline for the Sisters of the Chantry, whether that is because he is genuinely wanting to help or for the coin involved, depends on how far his relationship with Liliana has progressed. After all of this is done, he will go to collect the ashes and not defile them. This pilgrimage causing him to really question his life and how he's been living it, but it is a fleeting moment that he quickly shoves back down. During the land's meet, the king will finally become a king and align himself with Honora and set up an arranged marriage between him and her, allowing Alistair to stay in the Grey Wardens. During the final confrontation, the king allows Alistair to represent the group and the go-ahead to kill Logain in the duel. However, much to the king's surprise, Alistair ends up taking the throne. However, he does not mind. He will perform the dark ritual with Morrigan, glad that he finally had a chance to bed the woman. As the king goes through awakening, he will upgrade the keep, seeing as how it is supposed to be a fortress. After thoroughly upgrading the keep to a satisfactory standard, he will choose to defend Amaranthine as a result. He believes that saving the economic center is more important than the military center. Relationships. Liliana will find her way into the king's heart, primarily through her charming wit and bardish tendencies. He will harden her after killing Marjolaine, primarily because he realizes that the life of a bard was something she desperately wanted. However, while she may still be hardened, she still will affect him after their time together. He will be finding himself more inclined to help people overall. However, when given the opportunity with Isabella and Liliana together, he is all for that. If Zevran is along, he will deny him, because he is not into that. He wants the two lovely ladies for himself. The king recruits Liliana, Wynn, embarks upon Zevran, Sten, and Shale. The king does not kill Zevran, learning from his studies that it is better to interrogate the assassins. When Zevran presents the opportunity to recruit him, the king considers it and agrees to have him along, primarily because it's not a bad idea to have an assassin with a debt in your pocket. The king will harden Alistair and Liliana as mentioned earlier, rather indifferent to Alistair's royalty. Seeing as the king himself is royal, it doesn't really seem all that special to him. The king tries to be friendly towards his group, but really finds himself willing to only help a bit. When Sten mentions his sword, he says they can look for it with a hollow word, but if the leads are there, he will go after them. During Awakening, the king will recruit everyone except Nathaniel Howe. He will allow the man to go with his family's goods, merely just telling him to bugger off. When he would run into him at a later time, and Nathaniel begs to join the Wardens, the King of Thieves would oblige the man. Seeing as he asked for it, why not? Skills. For skills, drop points into combat training and stealing. These two are musts for the role-playing, however don't be afraid to go into coercion as well when you have the skill points for it. It's not a bad thing to have. Abilities and specializations. The king will be a dual-wielding rogue. As a result of this, take up the entire dual-wielding tree. To better complete Slim's crime wave, drop points into stealth as well. Make sure you get at least 1 rank in stealth. The king will be taking up the duelist, an assassin, and a shadow during Awakening. The assassin is not so much for role-playing as for gameplay reasons. Alright, that wraps up everything for this build. Have any build suggestions, comments, questions, channel recommendations? If so, hit me up on Twitter at @DesherTarat or leave a comment below. Thank you so much for watching my video, and God bless you. Have a good day.